Win our weekly jackpot with Paddy's Pick 5. Pick 5 winners from our 5 races to win. Enter for free online. Paddy Power.
Hello everybody, welcome to Road to Cheltenham. We've had a week beset by abandonments, bad weather again, but we've got plenty to talk about on this show, haven't we, Ruby Walsh?
I think we have, Lydia. Might be a lack of runners maybe in one race, but plenty to talk about.
There is. Let's talk about that straight away, shall we? Because it's been a bit of an issue across the season in terms of field sizes. The basic question is, where have all the horses gone? Because if we have a look at the Cheltenham Festival entries at this stage, they're down 35%. The Brown Advisory and the National Hunt Chase, the entries are published this week, the lowest this century. The Turner's the lowest in its history. Champion Hurdle down, Gold Cup down. Where are all the horses?
I don't know, and I started looking, and it's going to take me a hell of a lot longer to figure it all out, but look, I don't know where they are all gone. It doesn't seem right to me looking at figures. There seems to be the same amount of foals being born, so where are they going from there to here? Obviously there was a slump at the end of the last decade, or decade before even, 2009 into 10, there was definitely a slump in foals then. But
because of the financial crash,
yeah,
was that?
So we should have well recovered from that, but where are all the horses? I don't simply have the answers. Now, I do think when you're looking and pointing solely at the Clarence House, I think that's a bit harsh to just lump it all as to where they are for that race.
Because there were only 3 horses entered in that, and so we were asking each other, well, which horses would you expect to be in that? So you've had a good think about it.
I did, and had a good look, and the only other 2 that you could possibly have entered, I think that could possibly have been entered, were Editor de Geet and So Royale. I think they're the 2, like So Royale has entered at the Dublin Racing Festival, probably for better ground, which he wants. And Editor de Geet was good at Kempton at Christmas, but that was a grade 2, and it was a good bit of placing by Gary Moore. Edward Stone tipped up, he was getting the weight allowances, and he had a pretty hard race. So I can see why he's not running him at Ascot, because around London Gary Moore does like to run. So I can see why he's not in. But then you keep looking, where are the rest? Well, if you go back to last year, Put the Kettle On's retired, so is Politolog. Shack and Poursoir runs over 2-6 on Sunday at Thurles, or that's the plan. Dunvegan ran in the Tingle Creek. He ran in last week's Dan Moore. That's another one. Envoy Allen was 2 mile chasing last year. He pulled up in this year's King George. He's not there. Funambu Savola doesn't look to be in the form to run. I can see why Venetia hasn't put him in. Captain Guinness will probably run at the Dublin Racing Festival. Nube Negra blew out at Kempton over Christmas in the Desert Orchid. Dolos doesn't look good enough, nor does Andy Dufresne. Gabinaco, unfortunately, is not with us anymore. Blue Lord will go to the Dublin Racing Festival. Warlord, Riviera de Tell, Gentleman de Me, they haven't progressed enough to be in the Clarence House at the weekend. Third Time Lucky and For Pleasure, who were running in graded novices, have regressed. Nick Pastor hasn't lived up to it. Amarillo Sky is there. Course Sublime will go to the Leopardstown. Magic Days, not sure where she is. Brave Saska has proved he's not good enough. St. Sam is back over hurdles. Hawthorne Colour goes to the Kinloch Bray, and Sky Pirate, I'm not sure where he is either. But when you look through the graded novice chasers last year, the handicappers that are improving or not improving, and the graded horses, I can't find horses that should be there.
Good homework, but I think that comes back to the point of where are all the feeding through horses to give you enough horses to be at the top of the pyramid so that you can have them all the way down in the different divisions. So if the same number of foals are around, the horses are either A, abroad, B, point-to-pointing, or C, not coming into training?
Well, point-to-pointing is and it's so successful, but it's definitely been the best filter system for the bigger trainers that was ever invented.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. I mean, so instead of having to buy 20 store horses looking for a champion, the wealthier owners and bigger yards can just let the point-to-point guys filter that through and then buy the ones they want. So in a sense, that could be stopping some horses coming to the track. Is that the real reason? Probably not. You could also argue that the Thai Cottage, which would have been run at Punchestown last week, has been upgraded to a grade 1 and is now part of the Dublin Racing Festival. But that's only an eye for an eye, because the Celebration Chase was upgraded to a grade 1 and clashed with Punchestown.
But so it's all worse net though, isn't it? We should have an Anglo-Irish pattern, surely.
There's no doubt about that, especially when we're dealing with the same pool of horses. And both, I'm pain in my face saying it, even on the flat, England relies on Ireland to bring the horses. Ireland relies on England likewise, and the patterns most definitely should be joined up. I know it's a bit better on the flat, but makes no sense that they're running head to head at each other.
Over jumps, I don't think it does as well. I totally agree with that point of view. Right, okay, given that we're dealing with the horse population that we've got, our viewers have a number of questions, and we're going to start actually by hearing from a regular contributor to the show, Scott Rudderham.
Hi Lydia, hi Ruby, hi Roadies. My question's regarding the mares division. Is it time for Cheltenham to do something like introduce a ratings capping for these mares events, or even just scrap them all together? I think there's been some real good performances. I know Allegory Devassi won a mares novice chase, but Impervious has been brilliant in open company as a novice this year. They should both be running in either the Brown Advisory or Turners in my opinion. And even the mares novice hurdle, last season there was 19 runners in that race and there was only 18 in the combination of the Supreme and Ballymore. It's about time these races stop getting diluted. I think the mares should be in open company. Cheltenham needs to do something about it, I think. And my nap for the festival is Mighty Potter in the Turners.
Got a cheeky nap in. Well done, Scott. Thanks for your question. Let's concentrate on the mares for now, because there are a couple of things happening here. Essentially, there has been... What are you grinning at?
Well, Scott's nap is Mighty Potter. Why the hell would you run Impervious or Allegory Devassi against her?
He's thinking for the greater good, Ruby.
He is, yeah.
That's why he's
thinking about a bigger price for Mighty Potter.
There was an initiative in Britain, particularly, to catch up in many ways with Ireland and to have a more coordinated, better graded mares programme. And the idea was to encourage mares to run, because there's so many mares that are breeding the next generation of National Hunt Horse actually weren't running at all, or were only running in bumpers, so you never knew whether they had the aptitude for what they were providing the next generation for.
Yeah, I agree, and I would be, look, it is chicken and egg, and I would be in favour of the mares programme. I think that we have seen a lot more mares come into training. You always had great mares. You had Dawn Run. There always has been great mares. Flaky Dove, Lady Rebecca. There was always brilliant mares. But you're now seeing way more mares being put into training and way more mares winning races because you have a division for them, just like on the flat. So I would be pro it. I think a lot of mares will get to run at Cheltenham in the Mares Novice Hurdle that you probably wouldn't bring to the Supreme or the Ballymore. I don't know, has there been a winner of the Mares Novice Hurdle? Maybe Love Envoy this year. Lorena, yeah, what does she do after?
You'd surely have wanted to run in the Supreme then.
What does she do after that? To say that she should have warranted. I rode in the Champion Hurdle, she was favourite, you couldn't find her. Let's Dance, Limini. Has there been one? Are you saying Lorena, but she didn't win anything after that, and that was a pretty... And look behind her, what was behind her. I'm not sure that they're at the same standard. And I think more of them are getting to win races, which is helping the pedigrees, or maybe not helping the pedigrees, but at least when you're going buying a foal, you know that, or a 3-year-old, that the dam was sound and did run and did race.
Exactly.
So you have to try and give people that information to invest.
Exactly. And also there was a whole, 50% of the population, or was part of that 50% of the population, who weren't actually racing. So you've got your available foal resource and you actually weren't using all of it. So that's why there's a mares programme. And Cheltenham, I suppose, is the carrot that pulls everything through.
It does.
Let's hear from some other points of view as well. We'll start with Chester Williams, the jockey who's on the sidelines, and he asked this question. Could the Cheltenham Festival be changed to make it more competitive? He's thinking about making the cross-country race, the 2.5 mile novice chase and the national chase, hunt chase, handicaps. Chester, thank you very much for your question, and we wish you a speedy recovery from your fall on the gallops. What do you think about that idea? Because it kind of overlaps with Scott.
I was never pro the changes in the National Hunt Chase, full stop. I would have left it the way it was for horses who were maidens at the start of the year and not allowed decent novice hurdlers into it. And you go back to what the old National Hunt Chase was. It was my first ride at the festival, was in the National Hunt Chase. But they were different calibre horse, and it was a full field. But you couldn't have won. You could have won, I think, maybe a bumper or a hunter's chase, but you couldn't have won over hurdles. So it was a completely different race. So it definitely has created a race that where the RSA horses can get out of. Now you can argue the same for the Turners, but I think if you were to change one, I would be pro changing the National Hunt Chase back to a much different level of horse. As regards making the 2.5 mile handicap, a novice handicap, we had a novice handicap, big field,
with
it was competitive. Yeah, with a rating cap. I'm not sure. I think I don't know is the honest question. I must say I was looking forward to watching Gallop in the Champ taking on Bob Ollinger last year. Races are races. It didn't materialise, but I thought that was going to be a great clash. That didn't. Well, it did. Gallop in the Champ looked like it was going to be brilliant.
But there were only 4 runners.
There were only 4 runners. Why? I don't know. And the cross country race being a handicap. Never thought of it, Chester. I
can see it.
Yeah.
You know, to make it more competitive.
Yeah.
I can see that. All of those ideas, I think, would make the races more competitive. It's just that there are different things going on. We've already explained the background to the mares. Cheltenham are of the view, and many people are of the view, that Cheltenham should be like racing's Olympics. It should be a championship event. Now, obviously, when you get small fields and it becomes there's less competition, and you get very short price favourites, that becomes more difficult to justify. But thinking about reverting to the National Hunt Chase, they'll be saying, well, that's not the quality of race that we want at Cheltenham anymore. No,
but that's reverting the quality, but it's the same thing. So if you put a limit on the top of a handicap, you're down in the quality.
But they've got options to go elsewhere, haven't they? They've got the brand advisory, they've got the Arkle, you know, with the old novice handicap chase.
Well, that's where I would be pushing the National Hunt Chase back to where it was, so that you're limited to 3 novice chases, not 4.
Okay, let's take a question from Alex Teakle, who has got an observation about races such as the Clarence House, which only had 3 entries. Will top horses still run in Grade 2 races? Now, obviously, the Clarence House is a Grade 1, but there's much chat about turning it back to a handicap chase if the BHA turns them into handicaps.
I don't think he'd have Energrameen anyway. I don't think Willie Mullins would run Energrameen in a limited handicap. There's no way he would. He'd run him in Dublin Racing Festival, where he wouldn't have to give the weight away. So you wouldn't have him. Does that mean you'd have something else? You probably wouldn't have Blue Lord, because he's thinking he's a Grade 1 horse. You might get the next bracket down.
And more of them, I suppose, is
possibly.
the thinking.
But then you look at the 2 mile handicap chase last week at Warwick, third time lucky was top weight. There was 4 runners in that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. There was a £40,000 handicap. 2 miles was only 4 runners.
It does feel like we're just sort of shifting
deck
chairs around a little.
It is. It goes back to the very first question, and I don't think any of us really have the answers. Where are all the horses?
Okay. Well, it's something we'll try to use. You've undertaken to do a bit of
I started,
digging.
And by God.
So the novice chasers it is, and Ruby, we're going to start with the Madigan Group novice chase that was won by Impervious, the mare, downing some geldings.
Yeah, and carrying the penalty, so she had to give geldings the weight. She was a pound above the geldings because of her win at Cork. Look, they went a pretty decent gallop. Hador and Manila Crooner on the front end, Journey with Me, and obviously you have Impervious now in JP McManus's colours. Now Hador jumped to the front of the third, but when he went up by the stands to the fourth, he has a good look at this fence, runs around, has a look, gets beside Manila Crooner. Rachel Blackmore decides on the outside she's had enough of that and goes on going to the fifth, and she got in control of the race on Journey with Me. But when they got to the bottom of the hill here, Gracchus the Balm got rid of JJ Slevin there. Brian Hayes had slotted in behind Rachel Blackmore. He had decided from a long way out that she was the one he had to beat. He obviously wasn't happy with how Hardor was going, and he cries enough quick enough at the back of this fence. Manila Crooner was outpaced, but Brian Hayes was stalking Rachel Blackmore from a long way out, and he just sneaks through on Impervious here off the home turn. He gives her a squeeze to quicken up, and she comes up back on the bridle, but he doesn't go and take Rachel on. He sits back up and he gets between Hador and Journey with Me. He's obviously very confident in his mare, but the two of them do really start to quicken on to the last. I thought it was much better from Journey with Me, and I thought it was really good from Impervious. Now they're sprinting at the last, you can see them quickening, it's on the jump, they both get really good jumps, and she always has the upper hand. He never goes for his whip. As much as Rachel Blackmore asks for, Brian Hayes doesn't ask for as much, and she beats him kind of snug in the end. And I would think, watching it, she's improved for stepping up in distance.
Yeah, and that's twice now that Brian Hayes has relied on her jumping at the last, hasn't he?
But over 2.5, she found it easier.
Yes.
She jumped better on the whole all the way. So going up in trip has definitely brought about improvement in her, and she's a really good mare. But I think Journey with Me is going the right direction.
So do I. I was surprised. His jumping was so much better there, and even under pressure at the last, his jumping was good.
It was a way better performance, I think, than even winning the last day, and obviously he was disappointed when he fell at Gordon Park.
Manila Crooner just looks a bit airy to me. He needs further, doesn't he?
I think Connections have waved the white flag with him being a graded horse, and they're heading down the handicap route myself.
And Hardor sort of flattered a little bit last time.
Yeah, looks that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He was shockingly disappointed and no excuse for it.
He wasn't really up to graded company as a novice hurdler.
But looked like he might be with his introduction at Fairyhouse, but he wasn't last Sunday. Yeah.
It's great for Colin Murphy to have Impervious. She's not in the Turners, even though she was as short as 7-1 with some books. He wasn't completely drawn about the Mrs. Paddy Power, but you would expect that is the race that she's going to be
If she goes to
towards.
Cheltenham, if he hasn't been drawn towards it, is he possibly looking at maybe the Ryanair and Fairyhouse? Is he going to Cheltenham? I'm only talking here.
Yes.
Listening to your quotes.
Yes. He was saying he was going to refer to JP McManus and Frank Berry, so, we'll find out when we find out.
Exactly.
Let's have a look at another mare in action, shall we? This is the Warwick Hampton Novices Chase, and Galia de Litou, as we expected this time last week, was able to win, and she did so with a superb round of jumping.
Yeah, but Harry Skelton really set his stall out here. Actually, I was surprised, considering she had won over 2 miles and 1 furlong at Bangor, how aggressive he was on her. Now, she did jump really well. Obviously, beside her then you had Complete Unknown, the Goffer, and Gentleman at Arms, who made a mistake at the 3rd, and by the 5th fence he's out of the race, so it became a 3-horse contest really early on. But Harry was quite competitive on Galia Litou, especially at the next fence. He winds her up to jump the next ditch, and she really flies it, and that set the tone. So when he climbed the hill, he got a little bit of a breather, but here, the 5 across the bottom, first one, rode her at it and she wings it. Second one the same, she's spot on, and she's putting the 2 behind her under pressure with really good jumping. Now Harry was aggressive, he asked her all the way, 4th last, well he's the 3rd last course on this occasion, and then the last one, it's all over. But I'm at home thinking, is she going to keep going? I wasn't sure her stamina was as strong as it is. Another really good jump at the last, and she won quite impressively, but that was an aggressive ride, and it was jumping those 5 fences across the bottom of that Warwick that really sealed the deal for her.
That's the hallmark of Warwick, isn't it? Those 5 fences.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake at one, you're probably stuffed.
Yeah, but there's more than one way to ride them, and Jamie Moore did it differently on
Haddock's
Oboe.
Yeah, we're going to see that in a moment. Afterwards, Dan Skelton was talking about this horse wanting a trip, thinking she was a stayer, and needing deep ground. He was thinking he was probably not going to turn her out quickly for the Towton, but he was thinking about the Reynoldstown or the Mrs. Paddy Power Chase at Cheltenham, provided the ground was suitable. It needs to be testing.
Yeah, but she has still won 2-1 at Bangor, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really sure it was 2 miles and 1, so jumping probably made her a little bit quicker than the lads think.
Let's have a quick look at the betting for the Mrs. Paddy Power. Impervious is now the favourite with Paddy Power, ahead of Allegory de Vassy, of whom more in a moment. Scarlet and Dove is a very reasonable looking 7-1, I think. Zambella, who seems to be improved this season, 12s, and Galia de Litou, if she runs, is 14s. The title holder is 16-1.
Yeah, big. But yeah, it's a funny one, but I know it's a new race and a lot of people give out about it, but to me, if you get the majority of those horses in, Riviere de Tel, Magic Days, Jeremy's Flame, Dino Blue, Dolce, Ellie May, Galia Litou, you can make a really competitive race there.
If we get the majority of those, that's going to be by far the best edition of the Mrs. Paddy Power. Let's hope that we actually do.
It's only the 3rd edition, so hopefully it's a race that's building.
Absolutely. Right, Haddock's des Oboe, take it away.
Yeah, this is 2 miles at Warwick, and they went much steadier. Only the 4 runners, and Jamie Moore stayed wide, obviously because they're going to bypass the next fence, so he was out in the middle of the track and ready for that. Gives him a squeeze then at the ditch on the right hand side of the track in Warwick, but across the bottom. Watch how quiet Jamie is sitting, but he's still getting ground on the horses behind him. This horse attacks and jumps without having to open him up. He was still quick through the air, flies that one, but he sits again maybe at the next, and it was just surprising. There's 2 ways to do it. You saw Harry fire the mare all the way down, whereas Jamie didn't have to, because this horse was taking him and jumping really well, and it scoots away to win impressively, Lydia. This is off a mark of 136. I'm not sure what kind of a penalty he got, but a good performance, but 3rd time lucky, looks regressive behind him.
He does, I'm afraid, as does Bundorm. They were burnt off at quite an early stage. Gary Moore's entered this horse in the Arkle. You can see that, can't you?
Oh yeah, 1 mile, 7.5 furlongs around Cheltenham. He attacks his fences, he knows what he's doing. It was a decent performance. Would he go back to the Kingmaker or not?
Well, that's what I'd like to see, wouldn't you, against John Bon?
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
It'd be really good. He was in a race at Lingfield tomorrow, but that card's been abandoned and that race is not rescheduled to Sunday. So you'd hope the Kingmaker's coming into view.
But he probably was entered. That was for Friday in Lingfield. Would he have been entered before he won in Warwick for that race?
They were talking about potentially a quick.
Were they?
They were. They're worth a lot of money.
Mm.
Fairyhouse, beginner's chase, won by Flame Bearer. This was a farce of a race, wasn't it?
It was. One meaningful opponent was Highland Charge, and he doesn't like jumping fences. Way up in the air. That was his 2nd run over fences. And again, at the 3 fences all the way to Ballyhack. Take your pick, which one of them he jumps worse. There's the 2nd. The 3rd wasn't much better, and neither is the 4th going to be. But look, Flame Bearer then disappears into the distance, and because he gets so far in front of the opposition, it's quite hard to tell you how Flame Bearer jumped, because I couldn't really see him from even this distance on a bigger screen. He looks to jump that really well, whereas Highland Charge wants to give up, and the other 3, Francine and the 2 behind, They're not even in the same race.
Slip of the tongue
Slip
is
of the
one.
tongue. As there, we just got into Flame Bear at that shot where he was quick.
This was the shot I like best.
Yeah, this. They think there's horses there. They are, yeah. This one, I just don't like. This is what I particularly liked. But look, we zoom in on him now again here too. I think it's the 5th last, and we can see that he did jump well. Obviously, dropping in trips suited him, but what can we tell you other than he jumped around in a 2-mile chase and won, and jumps the second last nicely out to his left. Now he does get it wrong at the last. Paul gives him a squeeze and he changes his mind, but he doesn't touch the fence. There doesn't appear to, anyway, from the birch. There's no parting of the birch or birch flying, and he gets himself up and out over it. So he's a survivor.
Yeah, from what I could see, and as you make the point, you couldn't see all of the fences well at all. I wasn't particularly impressed in terms of technique. I felt every time he came to a fence.
Well, when you're that, like all we except you were looking at it thinking, well, he's over that one. That's about all I could.
It's going to get tougher from here, though, isn't it?
Most definitely.
Did the stewards have the camera operator in for not keeping up with the...
But sure, the other side of the coin is they're trying to keep... I'm not going to slag a cameraman. I never worked a camera in my life. But you're trying to keep everyone in the shot. I don't know. You would love to have had the tracker or something there on that occasion.
You would. And I was just joking.
All the cameramen out there, she's the one that was slagging you.
You get me into trouble all the time. Let's have a look at the Arkle betting, shall we? And see where those horses feature. Flame Bear is at 16, Haddox des Obeaux is at 20s, John Bonds at 11 to 8. Anything tickling your fancy there yet?
No.
There is one, but it's not the moment. Right, let's talk you through the entries that have come out this week, because the 4 graded novice chases have had their entries published. The Arkle first off, there are 26 entries in that. John Bon, of course, is the favourite. Hopefully we're going to be seeing him in the Kingmaker. 16 of the entries are Irish trained, half of those by Willie Mullins.
Shock horror.
There's going to be some disambiguation in the Irish Arkle, isn't there?
Of course there will, definitely. John Bond sets the standard. Whatever else is entered, there's no doubt about that. He was brilliant in the, what was the race?
Henry VIII.
Henry VIII, and he was good first time up, and he sets the standard. Willie has plenty in there, but they have to go a bit to get to him. Appreciated has won twice. Il Fabiolo, Dysart Dynamo, they've only run the once.
The Arkle has got 2 more entries than last year. Ultimately, 11 ran in the race last year. The Turners next up, and Mighty Potter is, of course, the favourite for that. He's also got entries in the Arkle and the Brown Advisory. As I mentioned, the Turners has got the lowest entry in 13 years. 21 of the 41 are Irish trained. I wanted to ask you about Dysart Dynamo, because he's in the Arkle and in the Turners that we're just talking about. But he's not in the Flogas at the Dublin Racing Festival. So should we be taking any clues from the sole entry in the Irish Arkle?
He's going to run the Irish Arkle, obviously. That's why he's a sole entry. But I'd imagine Willie has given himself the option for March or February not to walk out.
Okay. We should mention also Bold Endeavour, who is coming up.
Yeah, you were one to mention Bold Endeavour.
I did. I knew you were going to approach it this way. My point is, I think that we've got so many novice handicaps these days in the British programme, rather than wait for age races, that there'll be horses coming up through that will move into graded company more than you might perhaps imagine. And also I think that's exacerbated by abandonments and lack of choices that trainers have for horses because of races disappearing. But Bold Endeavour won for the second time at Doncaster, jumping at his right.
Big field novice handicap, that's working, isn't it? That change in the races.
Yeah, I don't think anything's working at the moment. It's just another deck chair.
What was in that?
It was a deck
4,
chair.
was it? Yeah. Make them all handicaps, it works.
There were 7 in that. There were 7 in that one, and
7.
he beat a horse that's won once over fence. But anyway, Reba's not taken by Bold Endeavour. Right, let's talk about
I'm not going to knock Bold Endeavour, but he has to do a lot more to me to suggest he's a graded horse.
Very much so. Yeah, he's only be starting to move out of the handicap bracket. I agree. Brown Advisory, Gaillard du Mesnil is favourite for that and for the National Hunt Chase. The Brown Advisory's got 34 entries, the lowest this century, down by 13 on last year. Not in this race or in any other race is the Willie Mullins trained Classic Getaway. The winner at Goran beat Manella Crooner. What's going on? I haven't seen him
since then, no. He's obviously not going to Cheltenham. Will he run again this season? I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay. Beat the Cocooner, I should have said, not the Crooner. Get your Manellas right.
Cocooner, he's out as well.
Is he?
He was not entered either, is he?
No, I think you're right. Right, National Hunt Chase. 37 entries, lowest this century, down by 11 on last year. Jerry Colombe and Chemical Energy are hunting up Gaillard de Mainil in the betting. Both of those for Gordon Elliott. Any thoughts on this?
So Jerry Colombe will probably go RSA, will you? Not RSA, Brown Advisory. He won over 2-3 at Limerick and Chemical Energy. Won a long distance novice chase at Cheltenham in October.
November or October? It might have been October, actually.
October, yeah. I think it was,
I think you're right, it was October, yeah.
I know I'm right.
You should try working with him, honestly. Always right, even when he isn't. City Chief, Hereford, Monday.
Yeah.
What did you make of him?
I didn't see it.
Right, okay. He was the one that made that
Mistake
terrible error
Exeter,
against Gelino Bello at Exeter. He took a long time to warm up his jumping at Hereford up against Coconut Smash and Jet Plane. Jet Plane probably went off too hard, but City Chief is only entered in the National Hunt Chase, but even for that, he's going to have to brush up.
That says enough for Nicky Anderson.
Yeah, you're going to have to brush up your jumping even to get involved with that, I think. Right, so that's what's the catch-up with the novice chase in the past week. Let's look ahead to this weekend, starting with the Patrick Coyne Memorial Altcar Novices Chase at Haydock. We can have a look at the decks. Here they are. And how do you reckon this is going to be run, Ruby?
How do I reckon this is going to be run? Stage Star won well at Plumpton on his last start, didn't he? And had been a little bit disappointing before that at Newbury. He made a mistake at Newbury, which he just launched at it, and he got high down the straight when Sebastopol beat him. But I thought he was one that could be handy. Lacked the constance. Unseated Harry at Kempton even, just threw itself at it, but likes to race close enough to the pace even. And Christopher Wood was the other pace angle there as well. I thought he could go forward, so they won't be hanging around in that race.
And then there's the Mare's Novice Chase. I said we'd be talking about Allegory Devassi later on in the show, and here she is.
Yeah, obviously very good in her debut at Limerick. Look, these are only entries. Declarations won't be until tomorrow morning. You've done, I think, looking at them, you've Dino Blue and Brides Hill as the real opposition here. As regards tactics, Dino Blue has rocked along in her 2 starts at Cork. Obviously impervious, just chinned her on this occasion on her last start. Allegory sat in behind early on at Limerick to the first fence, jumped it really well, but she jumped to the front at the second, so I can't imagine she'd be too far off the pace. But that was a signature of Allegory Devassi's win in Limerick, was her jumping on Brides Hill. I imagine she will follow them, but this is behind Flamebearer and Journey With Me, and I think that's working out a better race than maybe it looked on the day.
Yes, I tend to agree with that, although they finished very, very tired indeed, and she wasn't really engaged in the way that Journey With Me and Flamebearer were. No,
they weren't, but it had been improvement on her previous run, so she could be going the right direction.
Yeah, she was due to run against Tell Me Something Girl at Nace a couple of Sundays ago, but was pulled out because of the ground. Surely you're an Allegory Devassi fan, aren't you?
Oh, I am, yeah, I am. Thurles, different track though, even to Limerick at Christmas, that was 2 miles and 6 furlongs, down a couple of furlongs, much faster track, and there's only one fence in the home straight in Thurles now. So from the second last to the winning post is 3.5 furlongs with only one fence.
And given that
now that's the last year and a half or 2 maybe, but there used to be 2 down the straight and it suited better jumpers.
Yeah, so given her asset is jumping, that's a question mark. And would you ride Dino Blue any differently from last time?
Up in distance, she jumps well as well. Hard to know. Probably looks quicker than Allegory, does she?
She does. Faster? I don't know, but I just think Allegory Devassi is better.
Yeah, Thurles faster track too.
Yeah.
Good test of a horse jumping. Most horses that jump around Thurles will jump around anywhere.
Well, hopefully we'll be talking about this race this time next week. We're going to move on now to the novice hurdlers. Right, the novice hurdlers. I was really, really, really impressed with Impair Pass in the Moscow Flyer. I know it's more visually impressive than anything else because it was quite a steadily run race, but I loved the way he jumped.
So did I. And he's probably helped maybe by She Could Be Anything. Look, She Could Be Anything was probably trying to beat the Model Kingdom in here, but she didn't jump well enough to beat the Model Kingdom. She Could Be Anything had 1 over 2.5, and she needed to attack her jumps and try and make it a stamina test, but she didn't. Impere Pass kept jumping by her, and he was absolutely loving it. But what I liked about him, Lydia, was how easy he was to ride for Paul Townend. Pings the second last, and Paul turns the screw because they haven't gone quick. The Model Kingdom is coming behind him onto the home turn, but watch him lengthen off the bend, and he quickens all the way down to the last. Has a look at the last when he gets there and gives it a bit of height, but I loved his turn of foot, but I also loved how easy he was to ride. Every time he jumped by She Could Be Anything, Paul had no problem taking him back and switching him off again, and he just was so relaxed, so professional. This is his only, it's not a mistake, he just gets a bit high.
He's also very alert at it. He's looking at it.
Yeah.
You know.
Watching what he's doing, doesn't touch it. The Model Kingdom ran well. She could be anything, probably wants a bit further, but I thought it was a good performance. But you know, looking at him, everyone probably thinking, oh, Willie's won this race with Duvan Vatour, whatever else.
Michael Dagenais,
Min. A lot of them went Supreme. Michael Dagenais went Ballymore. That fella won a 2-3 maiden hurdle. I wouldn't be surprised if he went back up in distance.
Oh, I'm so relieved that you said that. This is the point where you chant your arm, because I've put up in Fairyhouse. I'm just going to study him for the Ballymore.
I'm only guessing. And,
I know, but not the Supreme.
I would look Ballymore to me anyway.
Right, okay, phew, that is a relief. 6-1 for Impasse. Just the fact that was only his third career start, and you've just said it, how professional he was.
And how straightforward he is to ride.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about his stable companion, Gaelic Warrior, because he dotted up again. This time he dotted up in the Munster Hurdle.
Did dot up, and it was a bit, look, he caused the false start himself originally. He charges off with Paul Townend the first time when the others weren't quite ready, and look, there was that a sign of him. He made the running in last year's Fred Winter, but he does, now maybe Paul was going and the others weren't, he ducks out a shot here, but he does create a false start. You're thinking, it's only, can't imagine there was a huge crowd in Clonmel, only 7 runners, is he a forward going type? So he does line up then and go himself, but he did show us a little bit from where we could see it, that he still has that tendency to jump a bit to his right. I thought it was maybe, he did race on the quickest ground at Cheltenham last year. I put it down to ground on that occasion, but when you watch him here, he heads he's looking to the second section, but he's to the outside of it on the approach, and he lands on the inside of it. So he does go to his right, there's no two ways about that. Down the hill to the second last again, when he's to shorten especially, he shimmies. Now that, when he's straight, he's not as right at this hurdle, but when he has to alter his stride pattern, he does go to his right. But what more could he do? Blue Sari probably is a fairish horse, but to be fair to Gaelic Warrior, he was fit, he'd had a run, and he just galloped him into the ground. It didn't look overly slow to me, Lydia. He looked like a horse with plenty of pace. It was a good performance. He does go to his right, but where does he go is probably the question.
It really is the question, isn't it? And as we see him finish off, he was a bit to his right even at Tremor last time, but this was very easy. 2 easy wins, one at 1-12, this at 1-14. But nonetheless, he clearly looks a graded horse in the making, but we need to ask the roadies, I think, what they might do with Gaelic Warrior. Now, Ruby, where would you go with Gaelic Warrior next? Was it A, Betfair Hurdle, B, the Ballymore, C, a Cheltenham Festival Handicap, or D, something else?
Ballymore or something else.
Ballymore or something else?
Yeah.
I need a decisive answer. Is it B or D?
I wouldn't give you a decisive answer.
What are you here for then, man?
Because what's the point in answering that question now? Because if something happens to Facile Vega, I'd run him in the Supreme. And if nothing happens to Facile Vega and he bolts into the Dublin Racing Festival, I'd probably run him in the Ballymore. So I said to you, Ballymore or something else. There's my definite answer.
Well, should we go to the roadies and find out what they thought? They think Ballymore. That's what their clear preference. And this is the thoughts that they had from Maurice O'Mahony first. He's thinking about the Dublin Racing Festival, the handicap. He's thinking about 134 that he had going into that race.
I'd say he's more than 134 now.
For the Betfair Hurdle, he's 149 with the British Handicap. He was a short head second in the Fred Winter off 129. He'd also have to carry a £5 penalty in the Betfair Hurdle. Do you think Newbury would be more forgiving to him? Was that just a look-see to see what his handicap was?
I don't know, he entered, but I'd be surprised if Willie ran a novice in the Betfair Hurdle.
Even a second season one?
Yeah, maybe he ran Selden Age, but he wasn't. He was a second season novice and he didn't win.
Jonathan Evans says it's got to be the Ballymore. He's not going to beat Facile Vega, and this race is wide open. I expect Willie to throw a couple of darts at it. Yes, and the bullseye is Empire Pass, Jonathan. Neil Tolson, you can be confident at this time of year, can't you, when the results haven't proved you wrong. This is what Neil thinks. The Dublin Racing Festival 2-mile handicap. If he continues to go right, Fairyhouse and Punchestown. What do you think of that call?
Yeah, it's grade 2 in Fairyhouse, and then obviously on to one of the grade 1s in Punchestown. Yeah, but I'd be shocked if he doesn't go to Cheltenham, there's something wrong with him.
Let's have a look at him jumping right. As Ruby was mentioning, it wasn't just last time out at Clonmel. All the time before at Tremor, it was also in the Fred Winter. This is him with Brazil, the eventual winner, next to him. He inconveniences Brazil at the third last, and then he'll give him a proper bump as well at the second last.
He will, yeah, and he was spot on at the second last, so I said he went right to alter his feet more so at Clonmel, but at the second last there in Cheltenham when he was long, he went right as well.
So the Ballymore and the Supreme on the tight turning old track, as is the Fred Winter.
Can't see him running in the Ballymore or the Albert Bartlett though.
No, indeed.
So he'll be running on the old course, that's just it.
Not a handicap.
Someone will have to steer him.
Not a handicap.
I wouldn't think so.
Right, okay. Those are Ruby Stokes. I think we've thoroughly cross-examined him on the subject of Gaelic Warrior. We can move on to the Leamington Novices Hurdle at Warwick from the weekend.
Yeah, great dawning. Plenty of runners in this race. Snake Roll, Nosy Road, G Vega, who was quite keen. Ginny's Destiny, Mexico, Grey Dawning and Moon Hunter, who was the first one beaten and was beaten really early. Moon Hunter, he was disappointing, I would say, but Grey Dawning dropped in like he had done at Kempton, jumped reasonably well. A horse in front there, Snake Roll, got a bit careful when the screw was turned, 4 out and 3 out, but look, the race developed down between Knowsley Road on the outside, Ginny's Destiny, and behind is Grey Dawning. Now the gap is there, Sham Shepherd sticking his right hand, goes to closer when Harry Skelton is there. Sorry, stand a bit late to try and do it then. Harry makes his way through anyway, and this horse keeps at it well. Another good jump at the last, but I think we've watched Leamingtons in the past, Lydia, they are stayers, and it is a hard race on horses.
Definitely it is. These are stayers, surely. I formed a positive impression of all 3 horses in the shot there. I really like the winner. He's finished really tired. He's obviously a stayer in the making, but he's got a great attitude. There was a stumble, wasn't there, at one point, which in that kind of ground could have put horses right on the back foot, but he was eager still after that.
Yeah, he keeps trying and fought his way through a gap going to the second last. Some really solid jumping, and he's backed up his Kempton performance. He's improved from his Kempton performance, but I'd say there were 3 tired horses on Sunday morning.
Definitely. But horses for the medium to long term. Let's be clear about it. Finally got off the mark at Punchestown. Now, he's running a graded races a couple of times, performed creditably. Poor thing even ran into American Mike on his maiden debut. Yeah,
and he had some really good bumper form as well. They were lined up in Punchestown. It was a 3-mile maiden hurdle. Keith Donoghue booked him out in front and never really saw too many rivals. Got in a bit deep to the 5th hurdle down the back, but look, he's still good at it. He flicks the top bar off, and that was a mistake in one of the race comments. I wouldn't really call that a mistake. Keith let him roll down the hill on the second circuit, and he stretched this field out up to the 4th last hurdle, jumps that well. Second last, he's still going much easier than all of the opposition, which he jumps tidily, and then Keith kicks him into the lead off the bend, and he goes and wins as far as you want. A good performance. Gavin Cromwell has trained an Albert Bartlett winner before in Vanillier, and that was a decent performance.
It was a decent performance. It'll be interesting to see what he does next. Let's have a look at Night and Day. This horse won for Willie Mullins and Paul Townend at Clonmel. This was a good performance. Her jumping got better.
It did get better, lined up good and wide, and Paul had the rider at the first, and she almost half threw herself at it, I thought. Same at the second. It's not spectacular. That Jockey eventually got up, but Night and Day, yeah, her jumping was better, but there is room to improve in it. And even across the top here, we're a bit far away, but that's just about getting there in my book. And I want to be tidier than that. Second last was bypassed, but she was much better at the last hurdle. And she's won away and won well. Now, her first run for Willie was in a Grade 1. He ran her in the Grade 1 at Fairyhouse last Easter. Behind.
We can take a look at that actually.
Yeah, and you look at the standard of mares that were in it. Now she gets well beaten that occasion, but Willie did pitch her into this. You've Brandy Love, Love Envoy, Grand G, Statuaire, Impervious, Dino Blue, plenty of good mares in here. She's at the back of the shot, but she looks like she's improved a fair bit.
She was there until 2 out.
She was 3 out.
3 out. Sorry, apologies.
Yeah, 3 out.
So.
Wish I got paid if I thought I was going to win a 3 out every time.
My point being that for her very first run in a race that deep, it wasn't bad at all.
No.
Stable companion Eva Grace has got off the mark as well. Let's have a look at her run at Punchestown.
Yeah, and look, again, she booked out good and handy. Now, I don't know, was she looking maybe at the tracker cam that we're looking for, but she always does drift away to her left with her ears pricked, but without jumping left. She always looks like she wants to go left, but she wasn't jumping left, so I'm not sure was she or wasn't she. But look, she had a good run at Naas behind Halka de Tarbat, and she's improved on this. This was 2.5. She does it really well. but again, it wasn't the strongest contest. Good jump at the second last, a bit high behind if you're going to be critical of her, and she's home and home by the time she gets to the last. Decent performance. She had a good run behind
Tarbert.
Yeah, and did she run behind Lucia in the bumper? Hidden Valley Lake, was it a Sandown last year in the bumper?
Oh, sorry. You're talking about bumpers. I was talking about hurdle form.
Was it Lucia? She was behind the Sandown.
Lucia.
She was no match for Lucia on that occasion.
No, she wasn't. I thought she was looking at the fence attendants in their fluorescent jackets. You could see her the first 4 hurdles.
She's looking at something.
Yeah, she
Maybe
is.
it was. Maybe it was.
She's looking at something, not the hurdles, which is what Paul Townend would have liked her to look at. Let's have a look at the betting for the Dawn Run, shall we? The Mares Novices Hurdle, for which Lucia is the favourite at 11 to 4. Bit short, I think. There's a host of mares that have shown good form here. Ashfro Diamond for one. Halkida Tarbert, who's a very talented horse, another. What are you liking there?
I think it's wide open, but because we've seen a lot of these horses not that long ago, a lot of people will forget one with really strong form, and that's Magical Zoe and Down Royal.
I know, you finally come around to we can have a look at Magical Zoe at Down Royal. We were mentioning this at Clonmel, Davey and I.
Were you?
We were. You weren't listening, were you?
No. I wasn't. Liberty Dance has improved a hell of a lot from this, but the Model Kingdom, Nikini, C'est La Vie, I think there's plenty of decent mares in this race, and she's come home well, Magical Zoe, on this occasion. It's just that to remind yourself that if you haven't seen one in a while, there's still plenty of form back there if you go looking for it, and this is solid enough form.
I think she did really well to win here.
She did.
A few of them were quite inexperienced in this race, but she ran really well. So that's Magical Zoe.
I think she's running away from the Model Kingdom there, who obviously followed Imperial Pass around.
Definitely. Let's have a look, as we did last week, at Timeform's pecking order. Last week we had a look at the novice chasers. Let's have a look at how their novice hurdlers max up currently, and we've added their trainers next to them as well. Facile Vega at the top of the tree on 152 Big P. Marine Nationale Head State to Cheltenham is 150p. There's Champ Kylie on 149. Hermes Alain, the Challow winner, 148p. Now, Corbett's Cross, Ruby, talk to me about Eugene O'Sullivan's horse on 142p.
Yeah, 142p. Won a handicap hurdle at Fairyhouse last weekend. Maxine O'Sullivan rode him. He's a bumper winner. He'd won a maiden hurdle impressively. He top weight in this occasion off a mark of 130. He jumps, he stays. He's a straightforward horse. And I think there is 25 to 1 available about him in places for the Albert Bartlett. I'm putting him up.
Oh, this is a bet.
Just think he's way overpriced at 25 to 1 for the Albert Bartlett.
Okay, 25 to 1 for the Albert Bartlett Corbett's Cross. Now, isn't this conforming to the kind of horse that I was sort of putting forward to the Albert Bartlett? You know, the
Did you
one...
put him up already?
No.
Oh, sorry.
I meant the argument that we had, the discussion, the creative dissent we had last season about horses for the Albert Bartlett coming up through handicaps and classier horses coming along, and maybe the type of the race is changing. Isn't that horse conforming more to the former type?
Yeah, but he hasn't had a huge amount of runs. So he's probably started at Clonmel, where he had to carry a winner's penalty in a maiden hurdle before going on to win one. So I think he's just flying under the radar. Obviously he runs in Paul Byrne's colours now, but he was in Eugene's, and I just think maybe not as high profile connections. It's flying under the radar more so than what he's done.
I think you're definitely right, because he's certainly flown under my radar, so my bad. So I'm going to go back and have a look at him properly. So that's a second bet for Ruby in this season. Right, let's look ahead to the weekend and some of the key novice hurdles there. We'll go to the other end of the distance scale and have a look at the Rossington Main, shall we? The Sky Bet Supreme Trial. There is the betting, for which Pembroke's 11 to 8 favourite. Rare Edition, of whom I'm a massive fan, is 2 to 1, and then it's 7 to 2 and upwards the rest. How's this going to be run?
How is this going to be run? Look, Rare Edition ultimately made the run at Hampton on his last start. He got taken on relatively early, but he sets a fairly high standard, so you'd imagine he will be good and handy at the weekend. If this, hopefully it'll be on. But he was a good winner at Hampton at Christmas, Lydia, and I know there's some shrewdies sticking him up without Facile Vega in the Supreme. I'd have to wait till he's confirmed he's going to go there myself, but he's a pretty good horse. This is Chasing Fire, winning at Market Raisin, was pretty close to the pace on that occasion as well, so he'll be up there behind Rare Edition. There's probably little doubt about that. And then you had Pembroke winning at Ludlow. Pembroke took his time, sat in there halfway around Ludlow, so you'd imagine Harry Skelton will follow the others at the weekend too.
I'm slightly surprised that Rare Edition isn't favourite. I think he should be favourite. I think he's got
I think he has as well.
The best form in the race.
Rock solid.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that is the Rossington Main. We're going to move on to the juveniles. Right, juveniles, Blood Destiny. This was impressive, wasn't it?
Very impressive. Look, what kind of a race it was, it's hard to know. But look, he lined up, he booked out in front. Davy Russell sat behind him on Jazzy Matty, and everyone else decided to follow Jazzy Matty. But I thought Blood Destiny jumped really well. This was the third hurdle, the second up to Ballyhack. He's going a decent gallop without going mad. And when Paul lets him roll down here to the fourth last, he just opens up and he's gone in the field. Jazzy Matty makes a slight mistake and nobody else seems to want to follow him. Paul slowed him down when he took a look back, jumping the third last, and the field comes running after him. Common Practice on the right. In between horses is Paradise Lost. Morning Soldiers coming on behind him. Nuzret in the green, but when he jumps the second last and Paul hears the horses behind him, has a little look, gives him a squeeze, this fella opens up and shoots away again. It was really impressive. I thought he jumped really well. He's a sound looking stayer, and he has to get up to Lossy Mouth's level, but he's definitely going the right direction.
He's second favourite now in the JCB Triumph Hurdle Market. Lossimas the favourite. Galim Marceau, who chased her home in the Grade 2 at Christmas, is third favourite. So Willie Mullins has got the top three in the betting. In that race, he got an easy, unchallenged lead, but he wasn't easy on himself, was he, the way that he raced through it?
No, he gallops along. He does take a bite, but he looks a stout enough stare.
Is it going to be difficult for? I mean, does Paul Tannen stick with Lossimas Mouth?
Well, he's going to get the rider again, isn't he? She's going to run at the Dublin Racing Festival. Might come soon enough for him, so he'll get a good handle on him before he has to make any decision.
We're going to discuss Metamorpheus now, who downed Calico. She finished third in the end, the beaten favourite, and she ties into a lot of collateral form. Yeah,
and look, Metamorpheus, Keen Quirk dropped Metamorpheus in mid-division. Calico was always close to the pace. Sam Ewing decided to take it up on Calico, facing into the back straight, where it bypassed a couple of hurdles, which made this a more stamina-sapping race. Metamorpheus is a long way off Calico. That's the third last hurdle. Second last, Sam sent Calico away from this hurdle, and he opens up a good lead, and it looks half unassailable. But Calico punctures halfway to the last hurdle, and Metamorpheus, who was ridden really confidently by Keen Quirk, who's having a good run, come and mows Calico down, and Calico has a look at the last. Metamorphosis attacks it, and it changes in the blink of an eye, and Metamorphosis was impressive then.
The winner jumps quite well, actually.
Did jump quite well.
For a horse that's inexperienced.
Yeah, very inexperienced, and came from well off the pace, but you like the way Metamorphosis did it.
You would, and Calico's still a maiden now, and was even beaten for second here. She had looked a real stayer previously, but I'm going to move to a different filly now, and that is Arclight, who was presented with a simple task at Hampton. Yeah, she was, and look, nothing Arclight could do about it. Wrigley Blonde goes to the first hurdle, ducks left, ducks right, jams on and gets rid of the Jockey. And then what does Arclight do? Well, Wrigley Blonde wasn't going to give it to her easy, but you'd love the way Arclight, when Nico switches her in there, flicks her ears, spots the hurdle, backs off it, watch her go and attack the next one then. You know, she's a clever filly, Arclight, and a lot to like about her. She had the Virtuoso flat out at the back of the third last hurdle, and she comes home in her own time with some decent jumping. So good performance, but Wrigley Blonde was maybe the only danger, and that was gone at the first. Yes, there'll be tougher tasks ahead. Doncaster listed mare's hurdle coming up has been circled in the calendar by Nicky Henderson, but there are some positives to be taken from this. Yeah, a lot to like about her. Okay, so that's the update of the juvenile hurdlers for the past week. Now, we can have a look at the betting. There it is, I mentioned it. Lossiemouth 11-8 favourite, Blood Destiny 7-2, Galim Marceau 10-1. The Best of British, Jupiter de Gite at 12-1, and Scriptwriter at 16s. Now, Ruby mentioned Keen Quirk, who is having a really good run, and he was one of the options that we offered to you for Analyse This. These were the four. And he's won. Brian Hayes, Impervious, got 19%. Davy Russell on Safura was 10%. Harry Skelton, Grey Dawning, we've seen that already, got 14%. But Keen Quirk ran away with it with 57% of the vote on Solomon Lane. So next we're going to get Ruby analysing this. Yeah, so Solomon Lane was the last race in Punchestown on Sunday. I think it was the last race anyway. Handicap chase, lowly rated race. Solomon Lane had never won a race before, and Keen Quirk dropped them out in the orange and black colours at the very back of the shot. Big field handicap chase, and he was absolutely in no rush. As you'll see when he gets to the first bend here, he is stone last. Now he does get lucky, a little bit lucky at the first fence, but the horse outside him in the green colours, when they get to the first fence after the round the bend here, falls across in front of Keen Quirk. So
no matter how far back you are and isolated you can be, you still need a little bit of luck. You can just see on the right you're shot in the light green colours. This horse is going to fall across in front of Keane Cork, who doesn't get phased by it. Solomon Lane dodges around it, jumps the last fence, even with the sucker to go really well. But you notice how quiet Keane is sitting. Keeps his eye in his hands at this fence, moves his ankles, but keeps his hands really still when he meets the fence. Perfect. He's not pushing or pulling this horse. Now he does ask him at the fence at the bottom of the hill, and Solomon Lane says, "No, I don't want to be asked." So he goes to the next fence and he leaves him alone. He just sits quiet, he's squeezing him without doing too much, and he jumps it a bit better. Now he does get slow at 2 fences down the back as a result of that mistake. This is the first one, he's coming to it now in the orange and black, jams on, but when he lands, Keane doesn't rush him, he lets him come back on the bridle, and the same at this fence when he's slow again. Again, he's patient on him without asking him to do too much too quick. He's looking for cover for him, last ditch he jumped it well, and when he faced up the side of the track to the third last, he moves over to the inside, but when he lands, again he moves back behind the opposition for cover. Obviously, he knows a bit about Solomon Lane, he doesn't want to be in front too long on him, and off the bend when Ambrose McCurtain has gone for home on Callie's Quest, Keane Cork is happy enough to watch him. On his outside is Maiden Woods and Robbie Gagan. He's flat to the boards, but Keane hasn't asked Solomon Lane for a jump in a long time because he knows he's going to need one, and he revs him up to the last. Whip in his left hand, tap down the shoulder, flies it, and straight away grabs this horse, and he's in full flight really quickly from the back of the last. Look, I doubt Solomon Lane is going to end up in Cheltenham, but there's a chance Keane Cork will be snapped up by somebody for the Martin Pipe.
18 shallow winners have run in this race. 0 have gone on to win this race.
One should have.
One should have, yes. Denman should have. But of course,
Ruby, you deal in black and white. No should have.
Yeah, but I can also say he should have because I wrote him.
Yeah, well, you deal, but he didn't. I guess is the main thing.
Even if
that wasn't Denman's
Denman,
fault or the Shallow's fault. That was my fault.
Paul Carby was a good ride, Nick and Orr.
It was, and he took the best ride usually wins the race, which was Nick and Orr, not Denman.
Now, sadly, there's been some bad news this week. We'll start with a horse that's definitively out of Cheltenham and the rest of the season, and that is L'Homme Pressé, sadly. The owners, who include Andy Edwards, have given this statement to the Press Association. They carried out some veterinary investigations after his unseat at the final fence when he would have been second in the King George. It's revealed a couple of issues, which mean he won't make the Gold Cup. He's going to be given time to recover. There's a possibility of races in the spring. That's a real shame.
Future weeks, maybe possibilities runs in the spring can't be a massive amount. Which
is good news. And it was a great run in the King George, a superb run, probably a career best.
Yeah. Well, like he was saying, we found the leg issue and we'll see him in 18 months. That'd be bad news, but the fact that the spring has not been ruled out means it's not terrible news.
50-50 flooring porter for the Stayers Hurdle, Gavin Cromwell has revealed this week.
Yeah, we've heard that in the past. You wish him the best of luck. It can happen to any horse at any time, so hopefully flooring porter can get there. He definitely adds to the Stayers Hurdle, so fingers crossed for him. Again,
he says it's a minor issue, nothing huge, but it does mean the timing of Cheltenham is touch and go. He hasn't, for me, been in the same kind of form at all this season.
No, and maybe 50-50, a little bit of time off might do him any harm.
And then there's Noble Yates, who should have been running at Lingfield this weekend, but his vaccinations went up to date.
Yeah, so it looks like he's going to Cotswold Chase, possibly.
Mm-hmm. This is your 66-1 anti-post bet for the Boodles Cheltenham Gold Cup. How are you feeling about it?
Grand, sure. He'll be 6-1 in the day, and what do you do then? Trade out? Is that what it's called?
Playing dumb, yeah. Like you don't know. Right. There's one race to look back at, and that is the Silvaniaco Conti, won by Pic Dorhy. What did you make of this?
Look, on paper, what was going to happen, and St Calvados dropped in, which meant Pic Dorhy was able to book out. Now, to be fair to Harry Cobden, he keeps wide of Cool Cody, who was going to take him on until he gets to the fourth fence, where he jumps it better than Cool Cody, and as soon as he does, wheels over, closes the door, and now he's in charge of the race. Paint to Dream, then Conor Brace decides he's going to take him on. Little bit before halfway, gets up on his outside down that side of the track, but couldn't live with him, and he's flat to the boards at this stage. That's the middle fence in the back straight. He's struggling before they get to the 5th last, but then Pictory makes his customary mistake and has had the 4th last, and he half gives Pain to Dream a little bit of hope round the bend, but by the time we get to the 3rd last it's all over again, and he jumped really well down the straight. He's a very, very good horse, Pictory, and showed there that he doesn't have to dominate, because Cool Cody went to go with him, and he just went a really good gallop to get in front of him. Pain to Dream had a go at him, and it didn't matter.
The grey that's disappeared out the back of the TV, that was Angel's Breath, having his first run for more than 3 years.
And very, very keen.
Yeah.
He'll improve.
I'm still interested in what happens with Pictory if he's pressed when under pressure at fences. That was clearly a career best performance. It was very, very good indeed, but we still haven't seen him, head to head with a very, very good horse.
A fair one to get him under pressure looking at him.
So looking to head to Thurles this Sunday, which is the entries for the Horse and Jockey Hotel Chase Grade 2 over 2.5 miles. It features Chacun Passoir going back up in trip.
Yeah, up in trip, and the plan I think is to run him with low in the morning. But look, plenty of pace here. This is him at Leopardstown at Christmas, Chacun Passoir, Jeremy's Flame, Gentleman to Me. That was in a 2-mile chase. He does like to be ridden handily. You'd imagine he'll go forward. This is the Paddy Power Gold Cup, French Dynamite, middle-ear shot. Takes off in front at the first of the Paddy Power, and that's a cavalry charge, so he can go forward as well. Fakir Dudari, he'll sit just behind him, you would have thought. This is him at entry, Editar de Guide, Pain to Dream, Fakir Dudari on the outside. This sort of race could suit him, and you also have Lifetime Ambition, who made the run in the John Durkin in the red colours, and Houghton Colour in Joe Donnelly's colours, Joe Mary Donnelly's colours, who will probably sit in again. They're all entered, and you also have the Rasso, who likes to take a lead, but plenty of pace, and the race setup could really suit Fakir Dudari.
Got the Fleur de Lis chase at Lingfield over 2 miles 6. How do you see this panning out?
A lot will depend on Manila Drama. He's obviously still in here, but he is declared in Haydock's Champion Hurdle Trial on Saturday at Haydock. He does like to go forward Manila Drama. He'll be bang up there. You also have Stolen Silver, who made all to win at Cheltenham on his last start. He likes to get on with things. That was 2 miles and 5 furlongs at Cheltenham, or 2.5 even. He's pace, and of course Bristol de Mai. There's only one way of riding him, isn't there? Book him out. Here he is in the Betfair Chase last November. He'll be bang up there on the pace, but Brave Shaska, Fenian, Destraval and Corrick Rambler, they all could be at the other end of the field. All 3 of those will be at the back, but there's enough of pace in there to make what could be a slog a bigger slog. It's
quite an interesting race, isn't it? Because it's drawn together horses that want different things. Some real stayers over 2 miles 6, some sort of quicker horses as well, and the pot has drawn them all together.
It will, yeah, and it'll be testing ground. I know they've put a lot of drainage work into Lingfield, but it'll be still, I imagine, testing.
More immediately at Haydock on Saturday, we hope will be the new one at Unibet Hurdle Grade 2, and Epitante will be relieved to see that she doesn't have Constitution Hill on those lines below her on that particular graphic. Her main danger, I like to move it, Ruby?
Yeah, probably is. Although, did he really... Rel Keel was only okay. Maybe he didn't stay.
They changed the tactics as well. Did he really enjoy those tactics? I don't think he did.
Maybe not, but you'd still be hoping that she'd be good enough to win that race and frank Constitution's Hill's form, if it needs franking.
I don't think it needs franking really, does it? But it'd be good for Epitante.
It would, yeah. And that could be a really pacey race. Manila Drama, For Pleasure, Jason the Militant. Be interesting to see what way they play it, but they all could front run.
Yes, Jason the Militant now with Phil Kirby.
Yeah.
Used to be with Henry de Bromhead, changed hands for quite a sum of money. And who was the other one you mentioned? Oh yes, For Pleasure.
Depends. I mean, he's a couple of ways of doing things, and Manila Drama as well, but it doesn't look like that'll be too tactical.
Okay. So there's plenty to talk about, weather permitting, this time next week. Make sure you join us at 9 o'clock on Thursday on Racing TV for Road to Cheltenham. If you want to do some reading, it's racingtv.com/Road to Cheltenham. Thank you very much for all of your thoughts, and also for a bet this week. That was unexpected, out of left field.
2 long price ones.
Well, that's all we can ask for. Tune in for hopefully some more this time next week. See you then. Bye bye.
Win our weekly jackpot with Paddy's Pick 5. Pick 5 winners from our 5 races to win. Enter for free online. Paddy Power.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.